Shall we read some Russian fairy tales? Probably next week will be the last installment of this before we move on to something else. I know I keep saying that, and then I don't have the time to like actually research and do anything different, but one of these days. Okay, we are going to start out with the wolf and the goat. Once upon a time, there was a goat who built herself a little hut in the woods and lived there with her kids. She often went deep in the forest to look for food. Whenever she left the hut, the kids locked the little door and stayed inside. When the goat returned, she would knock at the door and sing, "My little baby kids, unlock the door and open it. I, the she-goat, have been in the forest. I have eaten soft grass and drunk spring water. Milk flows down in the udder, and from the udder to the hoof, and from the hoof into the damp earth." The kids at once would open the door and let their mother in. Then she would feed them and go again into the forest, and the kids would lock the door very tight. The wolf overheard all this. Once when the goat had gone to the forest, he came to the little hut and cried in his rough voice, "Hey, little kids, hey, my dear ones, unlock the door and open it. Your mother is back and has brought you milk aplenty." But the kids answered, we hear you, but yours is not our mother's voice. Our mother sings in a soft voice and sings different words." The wolf went away and hid himself. Then the goat came back and knocked at the door, singing, "My little baby kids, unlock the door and open it. I, the she-goat, have been in the forest. I have eaten soft grass and drunk spring water. Milk flows down in the udder, and from the udder to the hoof, and the hoof to the damp earth." The kids let their mother in and told her that the wolf had come and tried to devour them. The goat fed them, and when she left again for the woods, gave them strict orders not to let in anyone who might come to the little hut and beg in a rough voice, saying other words than she said. As soon as the goat was gone, the wolf ran to the little hut, knocked at the door, and began to chant in a soft voice, "My little baby kids, unlock the door and open it. I, the she-goat, have been in the forest. I have eaten soft grass and drunk spring water. Milk flows down in the udder to the hoof, and from the hoof into the damp earth." The kids opened the door, and the wolf ran in and ate them all. Only one little kid escaped by hiding in the stove. The goat came back, but no matter how sweetly she sang, no one answered her. She came closer to the door and saw that it was open. She looked into the room and saw that it was empty. She looked into the stove and found one kid there. When the goat learned of her misfortune, she sat down on a bench, began to weep bitterly, and sang, "Oh, my baby kids, why did you open the door to the wicked wolf? He has devoured you all and left me with great grief and sadness in my soul." The wolf heard this, came into the hut, and said to the goat, "Ah, neighbor, neighbor, why do you slander me? Would I do such a thing? Let us go to the forest together and take a walk." "No, neighbor, I have no heart for walking." "Let us go," the wolf insisted. They went into the forest and found a pit in which some brigands had recently cooked gruel. There was still some fire left in it. The goat said to the wolf, "Neighbor, let us see which of us can jump across the pit." The wolf tried first and fell into the hot pit. His belly burst from the heat of the fire, and the kids ran out of it and rushed to their mother. From then on they lived happily, acquired wisdom, and eschewed evil. The end. Wow. You called it the goat. The goat did win in the end. Hey, Hassan, oh yeah, Andy was doing his 12-hour stream. I was not able to be there. I watched a little bit of it, but take that, wolf. What did I wanted to mention something. Oh yeah, so I like Mexican Ramen and Hudsonizer and Savage Punch. Everybody who Savage Punch was already here, but hello anyway. I like that the first time the wolf tries to get in, and then the kids tell the mom that the wolf had come and tried to devour them. I say, well, we don't know at that point that he was trying to devour them. I mean, you could give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Oh, and there's a cool wolf carbon. Bam. Yeah, we definitely see stories in here that are similar to things that we find in the Grimm fairy tales and such. Those little kids totally jump to a conclusion. Okay, the next one is the wise little girl, with another cool illustration. I don't know what is going on there. We'll have to see what the story says. Ooh, in Grimm's story, the wolf eats chalk to soften its voice. That's a neat detail. I don't know offhand what would happen if you ate some chalk. Don't eat chalk. Well, I'm not suggesting it. You didn't hear it from me. Okay, let's find out about the wise little girl. Oh, and right off the bat. Okay, it's called The Wise Little Girl, and we have two brothers were traveling together. One was poor and the other was rich, and each had a horse. The poor one a mare, and the rich one a gelding. It's gelding, right? Not gelding, gelding. I think it's gelding. Ooh, the surviving goatling hides in the grandfather's clock. That's cool. Well, there was nothing so fine as a clock in that house. There was just a stove to hide in or sit on, as we often see in these stories. Okay, so we have two brothers, one rich, one poor. They stopped for the night, one beside the other. The poor man's mare bore a foal during the night, and the foal rolled under the rich man's cart. In the morning, the rich man roused his poor brother, saying, "Get up, brother! During the night my cart bore a foal." The brother rose and said, "How is it possible for a cart to give birth to a foal? It is my mare who bore the foal." The rich brother said, "If your mare were his mother, he would have been found lying beside her." To settle their quarrel, they went to the authorities. The rich man gave the judges money, and the poor man presented his case in words. All right, I can see where this is going. Finally, word of this affair reached the Tsar himself. He summoned both brothers before him and proposed to them 4 riddles. What is the strongest and swiftest thing in the world? What is the fattest thing in the world? What is the softest thing? And what is the loveliest thing? He gave them 3 days' time and said, "On the 4th day, come back with your answers." The rich man thought and thought, remembered his godmother, and went to ask her advice. She bade him sit down to table, treated him to food and drink, and then asked, "Why are you so sad, my godson?" "The sovereign has proposed 4 riddles to me, and given me only 3 days to solve them." "What are the riddles? Tell me." "Well, godmother, this is the first riddle. What is the strongest and swiftest thing in the world?" "That's not so difficult. My husband has a bay mare. Nothing in the world is swifter than she is. If you lash her with a whip, she will overtake a hare." The second riddle is, "What is the fattest thing in the world?" "We have been feeding a spotted boar for the last 2 years. He has become so fat that he can barely stand on his legs." The third riddle is, "What is the softest thing in the world?" "That's well known. Eider down. You cannot think of anything softer." The fourth riddle is, "What is the loveliest thing in the world?" "The loveliest thing in the world is my grandson, Ivanushka." "Thank you, godmother. You have advised me well. I shall be grateful to you for the rest of my life." How did this guy become rich? Because he certainly isn't smart. As for the poor brother, he shed bitter tears and went home. He was met by his 7-year-old daughter. She was his only child, who said, "Why are you sighing and shedding tears, father?" "How can I help sighing and shedding tears? The Tsar has proposed 4 riddles to me, and I shall never be able to solve them." "Tell me, what are these riddles?" "Here they are, my little daughter. What is the strongest and swiftest thing in the world? What is the fattest thing? What is the softest thing? And what is the loveliest thing?" "Father, go to him and tell him that the strongest and fastest thing in the world is the wind. The fattest is the earth, for she feeds everything that grows and lives. The softest of all is the hand, for whatever a man may lie on, he puts his hand under his head. And there is nothing lovelier in the world than sleep." Wow, she is wise. The 2 brothers, the poor one and the rich one, came to the Tsar. The Tsar heard their answers to the riddles and asked the poor man, "Did you solve these riddles yourself, or did someone solve them for you?" The poor man answered, "Your Majesty, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she gave me the answers." "If your daughter is so wise, here is a silken thread for her. Let her weave an embroidered towel for me by tomorrow morning." The peasant took the silken thread and came home sad and grieving. "We are in trouble," he said to his daughter. "The Tsar has ordered you to weave a towel from this thread." "Grieve not, father," said the little girl. She broke off a twig from a broom, gave it to her father, and told him, "Go to the Tsar and ask him to find a master who can make a loom from this twig. On it I will weave his towel." The peasant did as his daughter told him. The Tsar listened to him and gave him 150 eggs, saying, "Give these eggs to your daughter. Let her hatch 150 chicks by tomorrow." The peasant returned home, even more sad and grieving than the first time. "Ah, my daughter," he said, "you are barely out of one trouble before another is upon you." "Grieve not, father," answered the 7-year-old girl. She baked the eggs for dinner and for supper, and sent her father to the king. "Tell him," she said to her father, "that one day grain is needed to feed the chicks. In one day let a field be plowed and the millet sown, harvested, and threshed. Our chickens refuse to peck any other grain." The Tsar listened to this and said, "Since your daughter is so wise, let her appear before me tomorrow morning, and I want her to come neither on foot nor on horseback, neither naked nor dressed, neither with a present nor without a gift." "Now," thought the peasant, "even my daughter cannot solve such a riddle. We are lost." "Grieve not," his 7-year-old daughter told him. "Go to the hunters and buy me a live hare and a live quail." The father bought her a hare and a quail. Next morning, the 7-year-old girl took off her clothes, donned a net, took the quail in her hand, sat upon the hare, and went to the palace. The Tsar met her at the gate. She bowed to him, saying, "Here is a little gift for you, your majesty," and handed him the quail. He stretched out his hand, but the quail shook her wings, and flap, flap, was gone. "Very well," said the Tsar. "You have done as I ordered you to do. Now tell me, since your father is so poor, what do you live on?" "My father catches fish on the shore, and he never puts bait in the water, and I make fish soup in my skirt." "You are stupid. Fish never live on the shore. Fish live in the water." "And you? Are you wise? Whoever saw a cart bear foals? Not a cart, but a mare bears foals." The Tsar awarded the foal to the poor peasant and took the daughter into his own palace. When she grew up, he married her, and she became the Tsarina. Okay. The end. Hey, Tiny Chris. And Darrow, hello. That one's cute. I like that one. That little Okay, except for that little note at the very end. I mean, he did wait until she grew up. He just groomed her by bringing him into his palace and waiting until she grew up. That fact aside, that one was cute. I like that one. The little girl is very smart. As we've seen lots of times, the poorer people are more wise than the richer people. Arguably, something true today. Yeah, I like that. I like the riddles. That one's cute. Oh, so that's how she goes in the end, right? So she's riding on a hare. She's dressed in a net, which is clothed, sort of, but also naked. And she's got the quail in her hand. Oh, that was cute. I like that one. Hello, Eridinsk. Thank you very much, Eridinsk. I appreciate that. Yeah, she's sore, but we will be okay. Let's see. The next one is a very long one, so I'm going to skip that one. Although I'm going to show the picture. That's pretty wild. It's like a strawberry octopus. Yeah, we don't. And usually, when we've seen ladies in these Russian fairy tales, they're cheating on their husbands. They're conniving, and not so great. All right, next. Ooh, speaking of rich people and poor people, here's a really short one called "The Death of a Miser." There was once an old miser who had 2 sons and a great deal of money. When he heard death come in, he locked himself up in his room, sat on his oaken chest, swallowed his gold coins, chewed up his bills, and thus ended his life. His sons came, laid out the dead body under the holy icons, and invited the sexton to chant the psalms. At midnight, a devil in human form suddenly appeared, took the old man on his shoulders, and said, "Hold up the flap of your coat, sexton." And he shook the dead man, saying, "The money is yours, but the bag is mine." And he vanished, taking the body with him. The end. All right. We've got a devil in human form. That's a pretty cool line. Hold up the flap. Yeah, the money is yours, but the bag is mine. That's cool. Let's see. All right, this one's a little bit longer, but let's try this one. It is called the Footless Champion and the Handless Champion. I don't know what I'm getting into here. Possibly ableist. I don't know. So, content warning, I suppose. Footless Champion and the Handless Champion. And I think we get a preview here of somebody handless and somebody footless. But we'll see. We will see what happens. Everything okay? Okay. A certain prince decided to get married and had a particular bride in mind, a beautiful princess, but he did not know how to win her. Kings and princes and brave champions from many lands had wooed her, but had achieved nothing. They had only lost their rash heads, which were stuck on the fence poles around the palace of the proud maiden. The prince was sad and distressed and wondered who would help him. Then appeared Ivan the Naked, a poor peasant who had nothing to eat or drink, and whose clothes had long ago fallen from his shoulders. He came to the prince and said, "You cannot win the maiden by yourself. If you go to woo her alone, you will lose your rash head. It would be better if we went together. I shall save you from danger and arrange the whole match. Only promise to obey me." The prince promised to follow the peasant's advice, and the very next day they set out on their journey. They arrived in the maiden's kingdom and began to woo her. The princess said, "First, the bridegroom must prove his strength." She invited the prince to a feast and regaled him lavishly. After dinner, the guests began to play various games. "Now bring me my gun that I take on the hunt," said the princess to her attendants. The door burst open, and 40 men appeared, carrying not a gun, but a cannon. "Well, my intended bridegroom," said the princess, "fire my gun." "Ivan," said the prince, "see whether this gun is any good." Ivan the Naked took the gun out on the porch, gave it a shove with his foot, and it flew far away and fell into the blue sea. "No, your majesty," reported Ivan the Naked, "it is a wretched gun, unfit to be fired by a champion like yourself." "What is the meaning of this, princess?" asked the prince. "Do you wish to make mock of me? You asked me to fire a gun that my servant hurled into the sea with a single kick." The princess ordered her bow and arrow to be brought. Again the door opened, and 40 men carried in the bow and arrow. "My intended bridegroom, see if you can shoot an arrow with my bow." Ivan," cried the prince, "see whether this bow is fit for me to shoot with." Ivan the Naked drew the bow and shot the arrow. It flew 100 versts, hit Marco the runner, and shot off both his hands. Marco the runner cried in a mighty voice, "Ah, you, Ivan the Naked, you have shot off both my hands, but you will not escape misfortune either." "A handless character? What?" Ivan the Naked took the bow and broke it in twain. "Prince," he said, "it is a wretched bow, unfit to be used by a champion like yourself." "What is the meaning of this, princess?" the prince said. "What kind of bow have you given me? My servant drew it, shot an arrow with it, and broke it in twain at once." The princess ordered her spirited steed to be brought from the stable. 40 men led the steed and could hardly keep him on his chain halter, so fierce and untamable was he. "Well, my intended bridegroom," said the maiden, "take a ride on my steed. I myself ride him every morning." The prince cried, "Oh, Ivan, see whether this horse is fit for me to ride." Ivan the Naked ran to the horse and began to stroke him. He stroked him for some time, then took his tail, gave it a pull, and tore off his skin. "No," he said, "it is a wretched nag. I barely touched his tail and his whole skin came off. Gross. The prince complained, Princess, you are still making mock of me. Instead of giving me a mighty steed, you gave me a miserable jade. The princess ceased trying the prince's strength and married him the next day. After the wedding, they lay down to sleep. The princess put her hand on the prince's body, and he could barely endure it. He began to lose his breath. Ah, thought the princess, so that is the kind of champion you are. Very well then, I'll show you. 1 month later, the prince made ready to go to his own kingdom with his young wife. They rode 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, then stopped to give their horses a rest. The princess climbed out of the carriage, saw that Ivan the Naked was sound asleep, took an axe, and cut off both his feet. Then she ordered the horses put to her carriage, commanded the prince to stand on the footboard behind, and returned to her kingdom, leaving Ivan in the open field. One day, Marco the runner passed through that field. He saw Ivan, spoke to him in a friendly fashion, took him on his back, and went with him into a deep, dark forest. The champions began to live in the forest. They built themselves a hut, made themselves a little wagon, got a gun, and hunted birds of passage. Marco the runner dragged the wagon, and Ivan the Naked sat in it shooting birds. They fed on this game all year round. After a while, they grew weary of their life and decided to steal a maiden from her father and mother. They went to a certain priest and asked him for alms. The priest's daughter came out of the house bringing them bread. As soon as she was near the wagon, Ivan seized her by the hands, sat her next to himself, and Marco ran with them at full speed. A minute later, they were in their hut. Maiden, they said, be our sister. Cook our dinner and supper and look after the house. Thus they lived peacefully and quietly and did not complain of their lot. Okay, so that went a little bit better than I was worried. Not a lot better, but a little bit better. One day the champions went hunting, stayed away for a whole week, and upon their return could hardly recognize their sister. She had grown so thin. What has happened to you? They asked her. She told them that a dragon had flown to her every day, and that she had grown thin because of him. We will catch him, said the champions. Ivan the Naked lay under the bench, and Marco the runner hid behind the door in the entrance hall. About half an hour later, the trees in the forest suddenly began to rustle, and the roof of the hut shook. The dragon came, struck the damp earth, turned into a goodly youth, sat at the table, and asked for food. Ivan seized him by his feet, and Marco fell upon the dragon with all his body and thrashed him terribly. Then they dragged the dragon to an oaken stump, split the stump, stuck his head into the crack, and began to flog him with rods. The dragon implored them, "Let me go, mighty champions! In return I'll show you where to find the water of life and the water of death." The champions consented. The dragon led them to a lake. Marco was overjoyed and wanted to jump into the water at once, but Ivan held him back. "First, we must try it," he said. He took a green twig and threw it into the water. The twig burned at once. Again the champions set upon the dragon. They drubbed him till he was more dead than alive. He led them to another lake. Ivan picked up a rotten trunk and cast it into the water. It sprouted at once and grew green leaves. The champions jumped into the lake, bathed in it, and came ashore with new limbs. Ivan had his feet, and Marco his hands. They took the dragon, dragged him to the first lake, and threw him in, and only smoke was left of him. They returned home. Marco the runner was old. He brought the priest's daughter back to her father and mother and began to live with them, because the priest had declared that whosoever brought his daughter back would be allowed to live and eat in his house till the end of his days. But Ivan the Naked got himself a mighty steed and went to look for his prince. He rode by an open field and saw the prince tending swine. "Hail, prince!" he said. "Hail!" answered the prince. "And who are you?" "I am Ivan the Naked." "Why do you boast like that? If Ivan the Naked were alive, I would not be a swineherd." "This is the end of your toil," said Ivan. They exchanged clothes. The prince rode ahead on the mighty steed, and Ivan the Naked followed him, driving the swine. The princess saw him, ran out to the porch, and cried, "Ah, you good-for-nothing! Who told you to drive the pigs home before sunset?" Then she ordered the swineherd to be seized and thrashed in the stable. Ivan the Naked did not wait. He seized the princess by her braid and dragged her around the yard until she repented and solemnly promised to obey her husband in everything. After that, the prince and the princess lived in concord for many years, and Ivan the Naked served them. The end. Wow. Again, definitely get the impression that that's a story that is made up of a few different stories put together. The deal with the princess who is so mighty and tests her would-be suitors, and then there's a lot of and then has them killed if not, and she's super strong, and we have all these tests for Ivan the Naked, and then this separate thing with the dragon and visiting these different lakes that have different properties. It seemed, well, I don't know, or maybe it's just episodic and it all strings together. But yeah, that's cool. Ivan the Naked. Who knew he was so powerful, so strong? I like that they trick the princess, and then the prince and the princess go to bed, and she just lays her hand on him, and he's like, and then she knows he's not quite so mighty. The bow, the test of the bow reminded me of Odysseus. That's how he sort of reveals himself toward the end of the Odyssey. He strings. It's a test to see who can string the bow and shoot an arrow through axes. And again, it's this question of what exactly does this mean? Is it like, are they axe handles where the blade of the axe is like curved over, so there's a hole through it? So it's more as a test of how far you can shoot an arrow and how accurate, or are you actually trying to pierce the axe heads and then it's just like pure power? Anyway, there's been a lot of scholarship on this, but Odysseus is of course the only one able even to string the bow, let alone then fire it, and then he is fully revealed as Odysseus. So anyway, it reminded me of a test of the bow. But yeah, I like that. I like that one. And yes, they did kidnap a young girl, but to be their sister. So again, that could have gone a lot worse. We got some more animal stories. We love to see those. Yeah. Yeah, that story it turned in some good ways, I think. First, we have old favors are soon forgotten. How true that is. A wolf fell into a trap, but somehow managed to wrench himself free and began to run through the forest. Some hunters spied him and began to trail him. The wolf was compelled to run across a road where a peasant, returning from the field with a bag and a flail, happened to be walking along. The wolf said to him, "Do me a favor, dear peasant. Hide me in your bag. Some hunters are on my trail." The peasant consented, hid him in his bag, tied it up, and slung it over his shoulder. He walked on and soon met the hunters. "Haven't you seen a wolf in this neighborhood, peasant?" they asked. "No, I haven't seen anything," answered the peasant. The hunters galloped on and vanished from sight. "Have my pursuers gone?" asked the wolf. "They have." "Well then, let me out." The peasant untied the bag and let the wolf out into the free world. The wolf said, "Well, peasant, now I will devour you." "Ah, wolf, wolf," said the peasant, "I saved you from a dire fate, and now you want to devour me?" "Old favors are soon forgotten," replied the wolf. The peasant realized that he was in bad straits and said, "Well, if so, let us walk on, and if the first person we meet agrees with you that old favors are soon forgotten, I will submit and you can devour me." So they walked on and met an old mare. The peasant stopped her and said, "Please, little mother mare, settle our dispute. I have rescued the wolf from a dire fate, and now he wants to devour me." And he told her all that had happened. The mare thought and said, "I lived with my master for 12 years, bore him 12 foals, worked for him with all my strength, but when I grew old and could not work any longer, he dragged me into a ravine. I climbed and climbed until at last I climbed out by dint of much effort, and now I am plodding along, I know not whither. Yes, old favors are soon forgotten. You see, I am right, said the wolf. The peasant was grieved and implored the wolf to wait until they met someone else. The wolf consented, and soon they met an old dog. The peasant asked him the same question. The dog thought, and then said, I served my master for 20 years, guarding his house and his livestock. And when I grew old and could bark no longer, he drove me out of his house, and now I am plodding along, I know not whither. Yes, old favors are soon forgotten. Well, you see, I am right, said the wolf. The peasant became even sadder than before and implored the wolf to wait for a third encounter, saying, Then you may do as you will, since you refuse to remember my favor. The third beast they met was a fox, and the peasant repeated his question to her. The fox began to argue. But how is it possible, she asked, that a wolf, such a big beast, should have been able to climb into this small bag? Both the wolf and the peasant swore that he had, but the fox still refused to believe it and said, Well, little peasant, let me see how you put him in that bag. The peasant opened the bag, and the wolf stuck his head into it. The fox cried, But did you hide only his head? The wolf crawled in with his whole body. Well, little peasant, the fox went on, show me how you tied him. The peasant tied the bag. Well, little peasant, how did you thresh the grain in the field? The peasant began to thresh the bag with his flail. And now, little peasant, how did you swing around? The peasant swung around, struck the fox on her head, and killed her, saying, Old favors are soon forgotten. Wow. Wow. The peasant learned something. I thought the fox was going to that I saw the wily fox part coming, but then it still took another turn at the very end. Take that, fox. I love how all the foxes are ladies, and they're all very, well, typically very cunning, very crafty. But you can get one over on a fox every once in a while. Yes, old favors are soon forgotten. How true that is in the real world. But we try anyway, right? We try. Yeah, I like that one. And all these poor animals who they gave their humans so much, and the humans just kicked them out. Yeah, foxes are typically in a lot of stories. They're the wise ones. Wolves are not quite as smart. But wolves are vicious and will eat you. All right, well, let's see where this one goes. We have the sheep, the fox, and the wolf. A sheep ran away from a certain peasant's flock. She happened to meet a fox who asked her, "Where is God taking you, friend?" Oh, my friend, I was in a peasant's flock, but my life was very hard. Whenever the ram did some mischief, I, the sheep, was held responsible. So I made up my mind to go away. I know not whither. It's the same thing with me, answered the fox. Whenever my husband caught a chicken, I, the vixen, was always held responsible. Let us run together. After some time they met a wolf. Good day, friends, he said. Good day, said the fox. Are you going far? He asked. I don't know where I'm going, the fox said, and told him her troubles. The wolf said, It is the same with me. Whenever the she-wolf slaughtered a lamb, I, the wolf, was held responsible. Let us go together. They went. On the way, the wolf said to the sheep, Hey, sheep, you are wearing my coat. The fox heard him and said, Is it really yours, friend? Certainly. Will you swear to it? I will. Will you take a solemn oath? I will. At this point, the fox saw that some peasants had set a trap near the road. She brought the wolf to the edge of the trap and said, Now, Go in there and take your solemn oath." The wolf foolishly went into the trap, which snapped and caught his snout. The fox and the sheep at once ran away from him for good. The end. All right. Well, I mean, I guess that's purely a fox is smart, wolf is dumb, and move on. Emily. Yeah, that one was a little bit less impactful, I think. But sure. I don't know what else to say about that one. All right. Next, we have the brave laborer. A certain miller had a laborer. He sent his laborer to throw wheat into the hopper, but instead the fellow strewed it on the millstone. The mill began to turn, and all the wheat was scattered. Don't you know how to work a mill? When the miller came to the mill and saw the scattered wheat, he drove the laborer away. The laborer set out for his own village, but got lost on the way. He went into some bushes and lay down to sleep. A wolf came. Seeing that the laborer was asleep, he came closer and began to sniff him, but the laborer snatched the wolf by his tail, killed him, and skinned him. Wolves are just not doing well in stories today. The laborer went up on a hill, and on the hill stood an empty mill. He decided to spend the night in this mill. 3 brigands came there. They lit a fire and began to divide their booty. One of them said, "I'll put my share underneath the mill." The second said, "I'll shove mine under the wheel." And the third said, "I'll hide mine in the hopper." But our laborer was lying in the hopper, and fearing that the brigands would kill him, he thought that he should try to frighten them. So he cried, "Hey, you there, go down! And you, strike from the side! And you, hit from there while I strike from here! Stop them, boys! Get at them, boys!" The brigands took fright, threw down their plunder, and ran away. The laborer crawled out of the hopper, gathered his booty, went home, and told his father and mother, "Here is everything I earned at the mill. Now let us go to market, buy ourselves a gun, and go hunting." They went to market, bought a gun, and on their way back the laborer said to his father, "Look sharp to see whether we meet a hare, a fox, or perhaps even a marten." The 2 men dozed as they drove and finally fell asleep. 2 wolves came, killed their horse, and devoured it entirely. The father awoke and lashed out with his whip at his horse, as he thought, but actually he hit the wolf. The wolf got into the horse's collar and began to drag the cart, and the father began to drive it. The other wolf tried to seize the laborer from behind. This wolf had a deep scar. The laborer lashed the wolf with his whip, and the knot of his whip got stuck in the wolf's scar. The laborer dragged him after his cart, so that one wolf pulled the cart while the other ran behind it. They came home. Their dog ran out barking wildly. The wolves took fright. The one made a sharp turn, overturning the cart and spilling the father and son on the ground. The other wolf jumped out of the horse collar, and the laborer dropped his whip. The 2 wolves ran away, and the old man and the laborer were left with nothing. They were well off indeed. Their yard was in the form of a circle. 3 birch poles stood in it. The poles were tied by their tops. 3 stakes were driven into the ground. 3 twigs were wound around the stakes. The sky covered their estate from above, and the whole world enclosed it. The end. What the heck did we just read? Okay. We have a wily laborer who well, okay, so he's dumb. He does the wheat wrong in the first mill and leaves. He ends up staying overnight in a second seemingly abandoned mill, and robbers come in and he tricks them out of their money. So he's smart then. Takes the money back to his parents. They go to buy a gun to go hunting. They're on the way. They fall asleep. Wolves come, eat their horses. And then we have, like, I assume this whole wolf thing is supposed to be, like, slapsticky. Like, the one wolf accidentally runs into the horse's collar and pulls the thing, and the other one, the whip gets stuck in his scar and he's pulling, and then they're turning. I assume that's supposed to be silly and funny. And then that part just ends, and then I also assume that the final section, the weird thing about the poles and the sky and everything, that sounds like a repeated phrase that this is the first time we've seen it, but that's got to appear in more stories. It has to be like a symbolic thing about how if you can make your property a certain way, you're doing well. But those are all assumptions. Otherwise, I have no friggin' idea what that was all about. I mean, did they suffer because they were supposed to suffer for some reason? I don't know. But as ever, we embrace the story and move on. Assume everything. Okay, that is good. All right, next. Daughter and stepdaughter. I think I've seen this video. A widowed peasant with a daughter married a widow who also had a daughter. Thus they each had a stepchild. The stepmother was envious and nagged the old man constantly, saying, "Take your daughter to the woods, to a mud hut. There she will spin more." What could the peasant do? He did as his wife told him, took his daughter to a mud hut, gave her a steel and flint and a bag of grits, and said, "Here is fire for you. Do not let it die out. Cook your kasha, sit and spin, and keep the hut locked." Night came. The girl heated the stove and cooked her kasha. From somewhere a little mouse came out and said, "Maiden, maiden, give me a spoonful of kasha." "Oh, little mouse, cheer me in my loneliness, and I will give you more than one spoonful of kasha. I shall let you eat your fill of it." The mouse ate his fill and left. At night, a bear broke into the hut and said, "Now, girl, put out the light and let us play blind man's buff. The mouse ran up the maiden's shoulder and whispered into her ear, "Fear not, maiden. Say to him, 'Very well, let us play.' Then put out the light and crawl under the stove. I shall run about and ring the little bell." So they did. The bear chased the little mouse but could not catch him. He began to roar and hurl logs of wood. He hurled and hurled them, but did not hit his mark. He got tired and said, "Ah, little girl, you're an expert player of blind man's buff. To reward you, I shall send you a drove of horses and a cart full of goods tomorrow morning." Apparently this was a rich bear. Next morning, the old man's wife said, "Go, old man, visit your daughter. See how much she has spun since yesterday." The old man went, and his wife sat and waited for them to bring back his daughter's bones. Her bones, rather. Suddenly, the dog began to bark. "Bow, wow, wow! The daughter is coming, with her father driving a drove of horses and bringing a cart full of goods." "You're lying, dog. Those are her bones rattling and clattering in my husband's basket." The gate creaked, the horses ran into the yard, and the stepmother beheld the father and daughter sitting on a cart laden with goods. The woman's eyes gleamed with greed. "That's not very much," she cried. "Now take my daughter to the woods for the night. She will come home driving 2 droves of horses and bringing 2 cartfuls of goods." The peasant took his wife's daughter to the mud hut and provided her also with food and fire. At nightfall she cooked gruel. The mouse came and asked her for some kasha, but she cried, "Oh, you vermin!" and she hurled a spoon at him. The mouse ran away. Natasha gobbled up all the kasha by herself, and, having eaten, put out the light and lay down in a corner. At midnight, the bear broke into the mud hut and said, "Hey, where are you, little girl? Let's play blind man's buff." The maiden did not answer, but her teeth rattled from fear. "Ah, so there you are. Here's a little bell. Run, I will try to catch you." She took the little bell. Her hand trembled. The bell rang incessantly, and the mouse said, "That wicked maiden will meet her death." The next morning, the wife sent the old man to the woods, saying, "Go now. My daughter will bring back 2 cartfuls of goods and drive 2 droves of horses." The peasant went, and his wife sat at the gate. The dog barked, "Bow, wow, wow." The wife's daughter is coming. Her bones are rattling in the basket, and the old man sits on an empty cart. You're lying, dog. My daughter's driving herds and bringing full carts. She looked up, and there was the old man at the gate. He handed his wife a basket. She opened the basket, saw the bones, began to howl, and grew so angry that from grief and spite she died the next day. But the old man lived happily with his daughter all his life and took into his house a wealthy son-in-law. The end. Wow. It's a me Bondo says, these Russian fairy tales have got me watching Life in Russian YouTube videos. I think these are written in all their apartments since that's the norm over there. Oh my. And everybody lived happy. The important people lived happily ever after. Okay, so what did we learn? Well, first off, we learned you have to listen to your wife no matter what she tells you to do. We learned that if a little mouse comes and talks to you, you should probably be nice to the little talking mouse because it'll help out in the end. That's always, we've seen Disney movies, we know that. Bears like to play games, so that's a thing. The dog will tell you what's going to what's on the way. Yeah, that was cute. I like that one. Man, that the old wife, so greedy. This miracle happens that this girl that the stepdaughter goes, that the old wife's stepdaughter goes into the woods and somehow comes back with goods and is like, take my daughter, she'll get even more goods. Yeah, bears are rich. I also like that the girl's name is Natasha, a favorite name of mine. There's a long entry about Natasha in here, and I end the Natasha entry because everybody, if you're ever considering naming anyone Natasha, you should know. And I end the entry. And just so you know, Natasha spelled backwards is Satan, which is a good thing to know. Yes, sell your daughters. sell off all your daughters. But yeah, inevitably people always do the thing like, oh, what's, they'll do the silly things like what your name backwards is part of like your Star Wars name or something. But it's good to know what your name is backwards, especially if it's Satan. Okay. Oh, this is good. This will be good stuff to end with. Okay, we have a short one called The Stubborn Wife. Do you think this is going to end well for the wife? Once a peasant shaved his beard and said to his wife, "Look how well I have shaved." "But you haven't shaved. You've only clipped your beard." "You're lying, you wretch. I have shaved." "No, it's clipped." The husband thrashed his wife and insisted, "Say it's shaved or I'll drown you." Jesus. "Do what you will, it's still clipped." He took her to the river to drown her. "Say it's shaved." "No, it's clipped." He led her into the water up to her neck and shoved her head in. "Say it's shaved." The wife could no longer speak, but she raised her hand from the water and showed by moving two fingers like a pair of scissors that his beard was clipped. The end. Jesus. Wow. That's pretty awesome. Obviously not the violence done toward women, but that even as she's drowning, she's like, nope. Wow. I don't know. And again, I don't pre-read these, so content warning, and I apologize in advance. I don't know where these things are going. But that was great. Yes, there is. I suppose there is a difference between shaving and trimming. Wow. Wow. All right. Next up, we have a series of anecdotes. Remember, we had a section of these before, and they were pretty good. So this one has a few of them. There's a picture. I don't know if this picture is... Oh, this picture is about the story we just read previously. So look, we've got the girl with the mouse, and the bear comes in. That's not a very fearsome looking bear. I feel like I could take out that bear. And then going home with her... Oh, Mr. Piano Pants, thank you so much for subscribing. We love it. Thank you so much. And then we have coming home with a cart full of goods. Yeah, that bear. That's not a rich bear. He's rich in spirit. He's got that energy. You can take that bear out to dinner. I mean, okay, look, that bear looks like he is good at games, though. He's got a gamer's posture. Okay, let's read anecdotes. Let's see what we learn from these anecdotes. An old mother was admonishing her son not to go bathing in the river. Now mind you, you rascal, if you drown, don't dare to come back home. Okay. That's fair. That's the old thing, like, if you're not safe, I'll kill you, like that sort of thing. Yeah, that's people really do say that. Okay, next. Once in wintertime, some drivers were driving on the Volga. One horse became restive and jumped off the road. His driver ran after him and was about to hit him with his whip, when the horse fell into a hole and sank with the cart. Well, you should be thankful you escaped, said the peasant. I was going to give you a terrible thrashing. So, same kind of story, but just the opposite. You're lucky you died, or I would have beaten you. Russians. Next one. A young peasant went hunting, and his wife walked with him part of the way. After having walked for a verst, she began to cry. Don't cry, wife. I'll soon be back, the peasant said. But that's not why I'm crying, the wife said. I'm crying because my feet are ice cold. The end. Okay. Now it's just ridiculous. I mean, hey, don't go walking out into the woods if you can't handle the cold on your feet, I guess. All it says is anecdotes for this section. Okay. Once a fool was soundly thrashed during the night, and the next morning everyone made fun of him. You should thank God, he said, that the night was clear. Otherwise, I would have played a trick on you. What trick? Tell us. I would have hidden myself. Yeah, all right. That one's not as good. He would have hidden himself. Okay. Yeah, Russian short stories. Okay, next one. 3 travelers dined at an inn, then continued on their way. Well, my friends, said one of them, it seems to me that we paid a very high price for our dinner. Well, although I spent a great deal, said another, I got my money's worth. How? Didn't you notice? As soon as the host looked away, I snatched a handful of salt from the salt cellar and crammed it into my mouth. The end. Okay, so these are going from silly to just nonsensical. He got his money's worth by stealing the salt and eating it. Salt, right? He's super salty. Salt does have all sorts of greater implications in societies that don't have good refrigeration and things like that. So I wonder if there's a little bit more to this, but I'm not sure. Not sure. Okay, and the last of the anecdotes, I'm sad to say. A peasant bought a quart of wine, drank it, and felt no effects. He bought a pint and was still not drunk. He drank a half pint and became drunk. Then he began to feel sorry for himself. Why did I buy the quart and the pint? I should have bought the half pint to begin with. That would have done the job. Okay, that was good. It's like I ate this whole big thing, then I ate this other thing, then I ate this little thing, and then I was stuffed. I could have just eaten the little thing. Oh, peasants. Sometimes you're real dumb. And look, they're just anecdotes. They're not even full stories. So yeah, a few of those were good. But a few of those were not. Yeah, you do, you peasant. Let's see. Let's do... Alright, we'll end with this one. One more. Snow White and the Fox. Oh, Erdens, thank you so much. No, for the new... Well, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much, Erdens. Okay, Snow White and the Fox. Once there were an old man and his wife who had a granddaughter, Snow White. Her little friends wanted to go to the woods for berries and asked her to join them. For a long time the old couple would not consent, but after many entreaties they let her go, telling her on no account to separate from her friends. But walking in the woods and picking berries, shrub after shrub, bush after bush, Snow White did become separated from her friends. They hallooed and hallooed her, but Snow White did not hear them. Night fell, and her friends went home. Seeing that she was all alone, Snow White climbed up into a tree and began to weep bitterly, saying to herself, I, Snow White, little dove, grandfather and grandmother had a little granddaughter, Snow White. Some girls lured her to the woods, and having lured her there, abandoned her. I like how she just, in her grief, she just recaps her own story. A bear came by and asked, Why are you weeping, Snow White? How can I help weeping, little Father Bear? I am grandfather and grandmother's only granddaughter, Snow White. Some girls lured me to the woods, and having lured me there, abandoned me. Come down, I will carry you home. No, I am afraid of you, you will devour me. The bear left her. Again she began to cry, saying, I, Snow White, I, little dove. A wolf came by and asked, Why are you weeping, Snow White? She answered him as she had answered the bear. Come down, I will carry you home. No, I am afraid of you, you will devour me. The wolf left her, and Snow White wept again, saying, I, Snow White, I, little dove. A fox came by and asked, Why are you weeping, Snow White? How can I help weeping, little fox? Some girls lured me to the woods, and having lured me, abandoned me. Come down, I will carry you home. Snow White came down, sat on the fox's back, and the fox darted off with her. She ran up to the house and with her tail began to knock at the gate. Who is there? They called from within. The fox answered that she had brought home to the old man and the old woman their granddaughter, Snow White. Ah, our beloved, come in, come in. Where shall we seat you and what shall we offer you? They brought out milk, eggs, and cheese curds and began to feast the fox for her kindness. But the fox asked that a chicken be brought out into the field as a reward. The old couple said farewell to the fox, put a chicken in one bag and a dog in another, and took the bags to the place named by the fox. There they let the chicken out. The fox had no sooner jumped on it than they let out the dog. Seeing the dog, the fox rushed into the woods and never came back. The end. Take that, fox. The fox may be cunning, but it doesn't always win. For some reason. I mean, here we have a genuinely kind fox, but I don't know. Screw you, fox, I guess, is the moral of that story. Don't trust the bear, don't trust the wolf. Ride home on a fox, and then screw over that fox. There you go. Let's see. So yeah. I will try for next time to look ahead and pick out some specific stories. Because like I said, we're still not quite halfway, and you don't necessarily want to be reading these forever. But like I said, I'll try to look through and find some specific good ones. I see the peasant, the bear, and the fox coming up, so we'll do that. Definitely find the rest of the Baba Yaga stories. There are a few more in here. Ooh, the armless maiden. That's probably good. It's been a while since we've read one with really crazy Russian names, so I'll have to look for that as well. Oh, wow, what the... Okay, I want to know what's going on here. What is that? Is it a hydra? And then we've got people down here doing something? Well, we'll find out. We'll definitely find out. Frolka and Erema. Ooh, the milk of wild beasts. Sounds good. Thank you, Tiny Chris. Yeah, my wife is... She's okay. She's sore, but she's okay. Whew. All right. So hopefully you've all enjoyed some Russian fairy tales to start off your week, your Monday. I can't help but laugh at these things. And I wish I had a little bit more knowledge of what this stuff actually meant. But what are you gonna do? We can still enjoy it even if we don't know what all of the details mean. Going through this week, in theory, you know what? I don't even know. I don't know what this week is going to be about. Tomorrow, though, I will be back for Toy Tuesday, and we are going to look at some... I talked about this a little bit late on Saturday night at the end of the group stream. Yeah, don't even. Tomorrow we'll look at the Starfinder miniatures. The review went up this morning because they're really cool. And then we're going to unbox and look at some John Stewart Green Lantern figures. Talk about him. And some other stuff. The usual. Wednesday, we'll be back with Warhammer... Oh, I'll continue with the Demonettes that we started last week. Last week. And so on and so forth. I don't know if we'll be doing Dune tomorrow. Jessica's got a bunch of stuff going on this week. And then we'll have Myths and Video Games on Wednesday. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what this week is going to turn into, but it'll all be great. I promise. Let me see if... Thank you, Tiny Chris. Yes. And yeah, go support Jessica. She could use it right now. Let me see who we should raid. Let's raid somebody. Yeah. And her poor kitty. Let me just bring up the old Twitch menu. Meanwhile, I'm going to continue working on all of the reviews I have. I'm trying to finish up the Star Trek Alliance review. So it's basically Attack Wing, but in a new box set with some updated rules where you can play by yourself because there's an AI now, an AI system for the Jem'Hadar fighters, which is really cool. And then beyond that, working on the Robotech dogfight thing. Again, this is exclusive, sent to me from Hong Kong. As far as I know, only a couple of people have this, which is kind of cool. But yeah, they want to hear what we think about it. So that's cool. Nightbot error connecting to remote server. What? Nightbot is drunk, everybody, once again. So weird. Hey, Builderess, you came in just at the end, but welcome. Thank you. Who is online that we should raid? Oh, should we raid Mika? We haven't seen her in a while. Yo, well, Nightbot is back with somebody. Some Nightbot commands are working, some aren't. That sounds about right. Yeah, let's raid Mika. hashtag, or not hashtag, other thing, raid Mika. Again, you can remind Mika that once the pandemic is over, that we're going to teach her how to play Warhammer. That's still happening. Okay. It's happening, folks. All right. Go say hi to Mika, or if not, go enjoy the rest of your Monday and your week. Thanks all for hanging out, and I'll be back tomorrow. Yes. Yes, I will. Okay. Bye, everybody.